to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Owens and Johnny Sobchak here for. It's going to be a great episode, but the things that we're talking about, not so great, unfortunately. But for those of you out there who have been dying to know over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 months who Agent Argylle really is, you'll get your answer on today's podcast. We're talking Argylle, the latest movie from Matthew Vaughn. Johnny, how are we feeling today heading into this episode?
I'm probably feeling better than you are, Zach, given that you are the one that braved the press screening for Argylle. And I'm curious really just to hear more about everything that you thought about it. Because it seems like a pretty, I wouldn't even say divisive movie at this point. It seems pretty rough overall from pretty much every single angle or source that I've heard on Twitter and social media, Rotten Tomatoes, etc. So yeah, it's the, I guess, like, we're also gonna be mentioning like Dune a little bit, and like I feel like this is really, January was a lull as well, but there was kind of maybe a little bit more mixed in there. February, on the other hand, is looking like a really rough bag. In this
So rough
of,
that they had to be like, hey, we're releasing Dune again on February 9th.
Yeah, 1 week extended engagement, a week after Argylle comes out in IMAX. So I don't know what that's, but
And don't forget, hey guys, we're also pulling Tenet out of the vault 4 years later because we need something in February.
yeah, it's between Argylle and Madam Web, I don't think it's cutting it. So I'm grateful that we are getting some opportunities, some interesting releases on top of that. But this is it. So
Well, I'll say it. Mark your calendar for Monday, February 19th, because we're gonna have a Madam Web episode coming at you. You better believe it, Johnny.
I believe it. I sure do.
If I bit the bullet for Argylle, we're playing nose goes. I'm making you go to see Madam Web. Oh, well, that's what we have today. Argylle, like Johnny said, we both saw Dune Part 1, and the re-release last week. So at least we'll have that to talk about a little bit. But before we dive in, make sure you do all the things. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter, The Rewind, so you can get everything delivered directly to your inbox, from reviews on the website to giveaways to new podcast episodes. Have it all sent straight to you so you don't miss a thing. You can sign up on our website or on our social pages. And while you're there, make sure you're following us across social at Inside Film Room and subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. But Johnny, I know we didn't podcast last week, so we missed out chatting a little bit about the Dune re-release. We missed out on the Masters of the Air premiere. So a little bit to catch up on as far as what we've been watching. So what's been on your TV on the big screen for you lately, my friend?
Yeah, so I feel like, we're just starting February, just wrapped up January, and I feel like my production in terms of movie watching in January was probably like half of what it was in December with, some holiday time and just more downtime. I feel like and more stuff to watch as well with the award season and voting and whatnot, really getting some stuff crammed in there. So that in January, I didn't really get into too much, but in the last week or two, knowing we were going to be seeing Dune Part 1 in IMAX again, and having not seen that movie in about a year and a half or so, I think, leading up to that, I did want to do like a rewatch of all of Villeneuve's films, or at least the the more recent or more prominent ones in his filmography. So I talked about, I think on our last episode, or maybe the second to last, I watched Ensemble. And then over the span of about 5 days, I watched Enemy, Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and then of course we capped that off with the Dune IMAX re-release. Um, so it was a great trip down kind of memory lane for me as someone who like I don't want to say grew up with Villeneuve or like becoming a Villeneuve fan because I was in my junior year of high school effectively when I first saw like Enemy and Prisoners. And then Sicario came out like the year I graduated. So it was definitely like a late high school, like college,
Mhm.
like era for me, and definitely a very formative experience. Definitely, watching his films, as they came out really got my interest even more peaked into like film and cinema. And so it was just kind of nice to see it all close together and just like have like the specific memories attached to like each one. And they all hold up. I mean, Arrival 2049, I think those are two like full-blown masterpieces. Dune, I think, is as well is on that level. Sicario, Prisoners, Enemy, all amazing, all still hold up. So uh,
Mhm.
I definitely recommend anyone, before Dune Part Two comes out, which is only for the early screenings, it's like about 3 weeks away now, if not less than. So
Yes,
definitely,
sir.
definitely recommend rewatching his films. I think they really grow the more you see them, like any great films do. And if you haven't seen one or a couple of these, definitely go and watch them because they're all, I think, have something valuable to see there. Um,
Absolutely. I've been following in your footsteps there, my friend.
yes, you have.
I'm not fully caught up like you, but was also doing a Villeneuve rewatch. So far, Arrival, Dune Part One in theaters, and Sicario. As far as rewatches, I still need Enemy, Blade Runner 2049, and Prisoners. And then have not seen Ensemble still. I know I mentioned that a couple weeks
Gotta
ago.
do it. You gotta
So
do
that one will be checked off by the time we're seated for Dune Part Two. But
it.
I'm
Okay.
curious. I think in my latest rewatch, I moved Arrival above Dune. I previously had Dune as my like number one.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think knowing I'll have to reevaluate once we have part two and it's like the cohesive story. But
Yeah.
after just rewatching Arrival, it was the third time that I've seen it. It's just so perfect.
It is a
I
perfect
had
movie.
to move that into the number one spot. So I've got Arrival one, Dune two, Prisoners three, which I really need a Prisoners rewatch because it's been years. But
Yeah.
I think that was the first Villeneuve movie that I saw. I remember
Yeah.
seeing it in theaters, being like blown away by it, obsessed with it. We talked about it last week, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
about just like the true crime murder mystery serial killer sort of stuff is like my favorite genre.
Uh-huh.
So like that was just like a perfect storm to really get
Bag.
me
Yeah.
involved. But Sakar, like I think you mentioned it on your list of like 1 through 3 are like all 5-star bangers, or 1 through 4 maybe, and then the other
Yeah.
ones are all still 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like Sicario is still just so good. Emily Blunt, Josh Brolin, amazing stuff. The
Mhm.
like tense Benicio Del Toro. I'm hoping for a Blade Runner 2049 rewatch that makes me just like fall in love with it the way that you do, because I remember that being more down on that one just because of
Yeah.
it just didn't hit for me because I didn't have like the fandom for the like story as a whole. Having I watched like Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 back to back, so it was like the first time witnessing it all. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, I've waited. It wasn't Top Gun to Top Gun Maverick waiting decade for the legacy sequel there. But I'm
Yeah.
definitely gonna give it another shot because that was throwing it back a beloved birthday gift from you to me a couple years
Yes.
ago.
Yeah, that sure was. I
And I
do.
repaid the favor with Pop Star, an equally great cinematic masterpiece.
Absolutely. No, I definitely agree with you on a lot of those points. I think personally, Prisoners is a movie that I think it's a great movie, but I feel like for me on rewatches, the other films grow like quite a bit and like their greatness just becomes more and more evident. And I feel like
Mm,
Prisoners is still a very great film, but maybe some of like the weaknesses or some of the more like cliche or like tropey elements become a little bit more obvious. And that was Villeneuve's really his first like Hollywood production as well.
Mhm.
Jake Gyllenhaal starred in Enemy prior to them filming Prisoners, but that was really like a Canadian production. It was filmed in Toronto, and A24 ended up distributing it, of course. But that was really more of an art film compared to Prisoners, which was like budget of like 40 million or something, 35 million maybe. Had Hugh Jackman, Viola Davis,
Mhm.
filmed in Atlanta.
Paul
So
Dano.
yeah, so just much more like that was him really getting his toes wet, and I think you can in this, and it's an interesting script, certainly, but yeah, I'd be curious definitely if you rewatch that. And same with
I
2049. I mean, that movie is like so in my bloodstream in terms of like what I enjoy and what I like. I would hope
mhm.
maybe on rewatch you would like it a bit more, but
I think that's a great point you bring up about Prisoners because like about it being like I guess the least room to grow because I feel like it's very clearly I guess you could make a case for Sicario too. It's like the most
yeah, you
grounded
can.
story. Like there isn't like it is to the point, like straightforward. There are no like, I mean, I guess there's larger messages about like politics and stuff, but like
Yeah,
Arrival, the way that it's just like transcendent, mind blowing, or
it
Dune, even
really
like with
is.
this universe or 2049, that there are, I guess you could still pick up things in like the mystery of it and connections and whatnot.
Yeah.
And same with Sicario being like the layers to like the conspiracies and the
Mhm.
government agencies, but still like I get what you're saying there. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, no, thank you. And to your point about Arrival, like it is just a true masterpiece. Like I said, I think Dune and 24/9 and Arrival and On Sunday, like those to me are masterpiece level movies. With Dune, I just think Arrival is like more of a masterpiece. Like it's just like so airtight. It's so well done and like hard to believe that they pull it off the way they do. But I do think, like you said, Dune could even grow more. I mean, it certainly grew on me even just rewatching it in IMAX this time around. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think after, like you said, part two comes out and you have additional context or different layers and connections that you can appreciate or understand better. I think that top four, I think just it's like a rotating like game of musical chairs, just the ranking. I don't think there's any wrong ranking there, but yeah, I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on Villeneuve alone.
Well, we'll have more Villeneuve, more Dune talk in the week leading up to the release of
Yes,
part two.
for
But
sure.
beyond Denny movies, obviously checked out Argyle,
Oh
which
yeah.
we'll have plenty of discussion on here in a second. Rewatched Poor Things, but on the TV front, started True Detective season 4. I know we'd gone on and on about season 1 a couple weeks ago.
Mm.
So I've only watched the first episode, still doing some work to catch up so I can continue with the live Sunday nights there. Mr. and Mrs. Smith came out. I know I'd mentioned watching a screener of the first episode. That's a whole series drop. So after that first episode, I thought it was a lot of fun. With Donald Glover and Maya Erskine as the two leads there as John and Jane. Think they're both funny. Think it's good chemistry between the two, and it's a very different angle of like I don't know if you've watched any of it yet, Johnny. I know you said it was you're more interested in it having seen some of the reception and some of the
Yeah.
um guest stars, but the movie, the beloved 2005 film with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, like the premise there is that they're a married couple that already has this relationship and they're working at separate agencies, versus this is taking a bit of a different angle of these two people don't know each other. They signed up for this job and got paired together, and it's like, okay, here you go, you're married now and you have missions and assignments together. At least that's how it's set up in this first episode.
Yeah.
And so they're like, as we're getting to know them in this show, like they're getting to know each other. So not so much like the at odds with each other, but instead a team working together, which I think is a good refresh instead of just like rolling out the same storyline that we got in that movie.
Yeah.
But excited to continue on with that one. I think it's 8 episodes, maybe 10. But that's all on Prime, so I will be diving into that this coming week and reporting back. But last thing for me, TV wise, I finished Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and I want to have a word here.
Wow.
Um,
You did it.
I finished it. I did. This came out at it premiered at like December 22nd, and then so most of the episodes came out this year. Disney Plus series, beloved childhood book. I remember reading the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Should have been the next Harry Potter, as far as just like fandom material, translating it to the big screen. those movies were fun, but they made the first movie and then they made the first two books into movies, and with Logan Lerman, Alexandra Daddario,
Mhm.
and kind of flopped, didn't really do it justice. Fans were in shambles. And then this whole show came back for Disney Plus. It's like, okay, we're doing a series. Each season is going to be a different book. And Rick Riordan, the author, was like, don't worry, I'm going to be like extremely involved in this, because that was the issue with the movies and how it like didn't get adapted well.
Mhm.
Um, I pushed through knowing now I am a 27-year-old man. I am no longer the like target audience for this like young adult
Yeah.
book about Greek mythology, but still like having an interest in the original books and the fandom. I was underwhelmed, and I feel like I've seen a lot of similar sentiment from other people our age, from people younger that are in that target audience, and there's just been a lot of general criticism that like you fumbled the bag twice with this franchise, even though this was supposed to be the
Yeah.
time that you got it right. And I think like the biggest thing is that they it's not like they're making this movie for kids, or this show for kids, to like have this new generation, but it's like they're making it for what they think like parents want the kids to see. It's like, I don't know, everything is like dumbed down and like very like surface level, and
Yeah.
it just didn't really work. And that's on top of like a bunch of the traditional like Disney Plus series issues of like they've got a ridiculous budget for this show, but everything looks flat. The effects are garbage. They're cutting corners. I know I sent you that video
Yeah.
that's like breaking down like Percy. I don't even know if you read these books. Like he's got this, his magic sword is like a ballpoint pen, and when he clicks it, it turns into a sword.
Mhm.
And it's like he's doing that off screen so they don't have to animate the pen turning into the sword. And like it's just
Wow.
the care and expertise that they promised they were putting into this didn't really translate to what we saw on screen. I don't know if they've picked this up for a second season yet, or what the initial order
Yeah. Not
was.
official yet, but
But it seems like a good bit of people were disappointed in what we got here. So, and I can't blame them, man.
that's tough. Yeah, when I was a kid, I read the first, I think maybe two books of the series. Um, I enjoyed them. I mean, I thought they were pretty good. I didn't continue the series. I wasn't in love with it. Like I was like, say, I don't know, a series of unfortunate events, or like even a Harry Potter, which is,
Mhm.
the direct comparison.
Another
Um,
show that was a movie for and then turned into a series of
yeah.
unfortunate events.
Yeah, and it seems like that worked out a little bit better from my understanding. I would still probably like to watch that show at some point because I did really love that series, but yeah, never really got on the Percy Jackson train. I was not like, I think every kid at some point is like, oh, Greek mythology, it's like so cool. Um, and I certainly was that, but I never like got like truly obsessed with it. And so when the movie came out, and you're telling me there was two movies, is that right? Or did they
It's
combine it to one?
No, it was two movies. So they did The Lightning Thief, and then which was like, I feel like this is very common that people forget that they did the second one, because they did the Sea
Yeah,
of
that's when it
Monsters
dies.
movie as well.
Okay, yeah, I remember the visual from like the trailer, I think, of like a big circling thing or something in the ocean, maybe. But yeah, so I never got into those. I watched the first movie maybe I think once at some point, never saw the second. And then yeah, I really no interest in this show from the get-go. I knew you were excited. I knew plenty of others were excited just because it's such a popular series. Um, so I think it is disappointing when it doesn't seem to have the same impact or impression that you would hope it would, the same level of care, like what you think it deserves. So that's really disappointing. I don't know what's going to happen. Season two seems likely. We'll see maybe if they can save it or improve it somehow. But yeah, on my end, just the last couple things here I'll mention briefly. I watched one other real movie in the last couple weeks, and that was Only Angels Have Wings, which is the Howard Hawks film from 1939. Cary Grant, I have not seen that many Cary Grant movies, so it was something I was looking forward to and really enjoyed it. I think it's a great movie. It's in the Criterion Collection, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I thought it was just it's such a classic. It's almost like a hangout movie. from this area. The setting and like the plot is very interesting. It's very like unique. Basically this like it's this small like village or like town in like some and like vague South American or Central American country, and Cary Grant and like this group of basically immigrants from the U.S. All these white guys live there, and they act as like pilots, flying like supplies like back and forth through like different parts of the country. And then this lady like comes in and she falls for like Cary Grant, and it's just like a very interesting like plot. I think it's like feels very modern, and it's handled really well. So I would definitely recommend it. Almost 100-year-old movie, and it really holds up. So for the most part, there's some stuff that's a little sketchy, but I really enjoyed it. And that was only my second Howard Hawks film, I think. And so I definitely like him as a director. I got to see some more of his films. But and then on the TV front, I have not been watching much TV. I haven't been watching like all that much in general, just because of scheduling. But Band of Brothers, my dad really wanted to go through and watch this, and it's been on my list forever. I think I maybe mentioned it in previous episodes, but having seen Masters of the Air now, I did want to go ahead and finally get this off my list. And it's been fun watching it with him and hearing his army stories and his input on the different historical points and whatnot, having lived in Germany and the Netherlands. And so I've really been enjoying that. Very much a Saving Private Ryan. Like you can see the influence from that movie on this show, and like the style and everything. Of course, Spielberg and Tom Hanks involved with this show. I'm just over like halfway through. We just finished episode 6 of 10, and I really like it. The one thing I'd mentioned, like it is great. Like I know a lot of people say it's like a masterpiece or it's like the greatest show ever made or like whatever you want to say. I think it's really great, but I think if I had seen this when it came out like 20 years ago, like if I had been alive to watch it and like enjoy it at that time, like I would now, I feel like my mind would be absolutely blown by like the scale and like the effects and like just the production. But now this is like a standard like streaming show, like in terms of like the budget and like the production like quality and everything.
Right.
The storytelling I think is definitely very strong, in the characters and everything, which is not necessarily the case with every streaming show. Easy to say, Percy Jackson, for example, but I think that it definitely, I can see why it's been so renowned and so, I guess, like influential probably in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to keep finishing that. And also, if you've never seen it, for people that are unfamiliar, the one thing I've really been getting a kick out of is just seeing all these super famous people show up and like make cameos for like 30 seconds or like a couple scenes. Because at the time when they made it, they weren't super famous. They were like
Andrew Scott.
Yes, Andrew Scott is there for like an episode, and it's kind of like, it's not like an anthology necessarily, but like different episodes focus on different characters or like different groups, kind of. So it's kind of a rotating door in terms of like who's the main focus and like who you're really following, which I think it keeps me interested. But yes, Andrew Scott, that was a great one I didn't see coming. I won't spoil anything else because I really truly was surprised by a lot of them, but just some really big famous people that are still, more popular than ever, really took off after this, of course. So
I know like on the HBO handles and the Max handles on social, they've really been pushing a lot of content from this because of Masters of the Air. Like they're trying to capitalize on the connection there. So I've been seeing a lot of it, and it's made me want to go watch this. I'm in the thick of Masters of the Air, so I want to continue with that one before I go back to the OG here.
Yeah.
But I had the same thought of like looking back at the cast of Band of Brothers and like seeing who's blown up, like, and then comparing that to Masters of the Air. Like obviously, you've got Austin Butler and Barry Keoghan and and Callum Turner in that movie, who are like already like either stars or up and coming stars. So it'll be interesting to look back like 20 years from now on Masters of the Air and see if there's the same sort of connection of people that all were in this all together and then ended up being, what the cast of Band of Brothers is like now.
Yeah, it is. I think it's interesting you mentioned that, just to quickly compare. Like, I think Masters of the Air, having seen all of Masters of the Air and still have more to go on Band of Brothers, I think Band of Brothers, especially given that it's 20 years old, is like the better show and like the more impressive show. And I think to your point, like Masters of the Air, because of when it's coming out, feels not like any other show, but it's a big budget streaming show.
It's not as like
It's not as
once in a lifetime sort of
yeah,
as
it's not as
Phantom Thread.
groundbreaking. It's not as like as much of a revelation in terms of like what it is as an event type series. So I think it's harder to say in that regard. And I just feel like I don't know. I mean, we can't predict the future, obviously, but it's like I can't see that many of the actors in Masters of the Air like breaking out or going on to have like incredible careers like some of the people in Masters of the Air do. Um, who like barely have any lines or like are only show up for like a scene or an episode. Like I just don't see that happening with Masters of the Air. I will say, in Kuti Gatwa, who is Doctor Who now, obviously, and was in Sex Education and like had some other stuff, was in Barbie. Um, he's someone who I could see being really big, like eventually. And he is in Masters of the Air very like little. So that's someone who I could be point to and be like, oh, like they're like he's gonna be like a big like actor. But anyone else, I mean, like they're good, but I just can't see. I don't know. It would be very interesting to go back, like you said, and find out. But it's weird because I feel like there could have been even more, like given how big the cast is, I feel like there could have been even more big names, even for like little smaller roles. But I guess they were probably saving the budget for VFX, which there are a lot of them, and they look really good. So,
Well, Johnny, would you like to transition to something that has a lot of VFX that don't look very good?
wow, what a segue!
I mean, you teed it up with
Wonderfully done.
with the exact opposite of what we're going to be talking about here with Argylle. So let's dive in. If you're anything like me, you've spent the last 6 months of your life sleepless, wondering, questioning who could be the real Agent Argylle. Ever since
So true.
Samuel L. Jackson uttered the lines in the first trailer for this movie, it's like I didn't even know there was a real Agent Argylle. What do you mean? What do you mean it's not Henry Cavill? What are you talking about? And I just haven't been able to focus on anything since then. And come Tuesday night of this past week, I was able to finally learn the identity of Agent Argylle. And let me tell you, I was not prepared. But more on that later.
Jeez.
So this movie, it is the latest from director Matthew Vaughn, of course, responsible for the Kingsman franchise. I saw Kingsman, saw the second one, The Golden Circle, I think is what it's called. Did not see The King's Man, the prequel. But those first two movies, liked them well enough. They're fun. They're action. They're silly. Taron Egerton's great.
Yeah.
So it's not like I was going, I guess trailers made me go into this with a certain mindset, but like Matthew Vaughn did not make me go into this thinking it was going to be bad, based on his previous work.
Yeah.
This was probably one of the most played trailers over the last half year. I can't remember going to a movie and not having this like shoved down my throat, as far as the cat in the trailers, the who is Agent Argylle, all of the silly stuff that happens, Dua Lipa. But you know, they really got it out there, and we'll see how it goes. But starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Henry Cavill, John Cena, Dua Lipa, Bryan Cranston, Ariana DeBose, Catherine O'Hara, Samuel L. Jackson, star-studded cast, Johnny. I mean, look at that roster. That is like A-list, big time.
Yeah.
Big time names, big time people that, you know, if you're an average moviegoer, you're going to be like, oh my God, that's Superman. Oh my God, that's John Cena. Dua Lipa's in it. Like, those are like huge names. But I'm going to get into the cast here in a little bit, as far as, you know, who's who and who is in this for how long, because that's a big thing. But as I continue on the stage setting here, Rotten Tomatoes currently has this at a 35% critic score and a 66% audience score. So quite divisive, I would say, but I don't think I'm necessarily surprised, especially with like dumb, silly action movies. Like there's usually this sort of split where audience is like, I ate my popcorn and watched the screen.
Yeah.
And so they had a good enough time with it. Me, on the other hand, way down here, brother. 12 out of 100. I gave this a half star. I was actively angry sitting in the theater watching this movie. Head in my hands, trying to comprehend the crimes against cinema that were occurring at the AMC Concord Mills.
Oh man.
Here's the plot, Johnny.
Yeah, I
In
gotta say
case you,
real quick, it did get like to your point, it got a C plus on Cinema Score, which is like absolutely like abominable for like a blockbuster type movie. Usually if it's like one of those movies, like you said, like you just want to go in, quote unquote, turn your brain off, get some popcorn, like just have a good
like a
time.
Fast and the Furious type.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like that is like C plus for this type of movie is disastrous. Like even the Kingsman movies got like for comparison got B pluses, both of them. The first, the second, and the spin-off movie they did. Which is like obviously a B plus. That's quite a ways from a C plus, given that there's a B and a B minus before you get down to the C's. So yeah, that's just I don't think this is like a big bomb in terms of an investment, I would imagine. But
And this
yeah.
was also supposed to be an Apple original, like straight to streaming, and then they decided to change it up and do the theatrical route. Um,
Yeah.
so additional investment
You're losing
beyond
me
just
there, I
the
feel.
streaming. But yeah, I mean, if you have not picked up on the plot from the millions of trailers, Bryce Dallas Howard plays Ellie Conway, the reclusive author of a series of best-selling espionage novels, whose idea of bliss is a night at home with her computer and her cat Alfie, that damn cat. But when the plots of Ellie's fictional books, which center on a secret agent Argylle and his mission to unravel a global spy syndicate, begin to mirror the covert actions of a real-life spy organization, quiet evenings at home become a thing of the past, accompanied by Aiden, played by Oscar winner Sam Rockwell, a cat-allergic spy. Ellie, carrying Alfie, her cat, in her backpack, races across the world to stay one step ahead of the killers as the line between Ellie's fictional world and her real one begins to blur. All right, let's dive into this. The spoiler warning is out there. If you don't want to know the identity of Agent Argylle, stop listening now. But that is so key to this movie and my feelings about it that we have to explore
You're
it.
not missing
So,
anything.
Johnny, I know you were shocked when I came out of the theater and immediately dropped the identity into the group chat because nobody else in our group chat was going to see this thing. But like I said earlier, I was upset in the theater watching this. It's one of the worst movies I remember seeing in recent
Wow.
years.
Wow.
This immediately on my I've only seen I think 2024 movies, maybe 4. But this was at the bottom. And just to make sure I've seen 5 this year, and this is like at the bottom of the list, and it's gonna take a lot to move below it, I think. And just for my peace of mind to make sure I wasn't overreacting, like I went back and looked at my 2023 rankings list,
Yeah.
scrolled all the way down to the bottom, and I was like, did I enjoy that movie more? Would I put this below that to make sure I wasn't just being dramatic about like my small sample size this year? And yeah, a lot of those low ones on my 2023 list were much better than this. So that's tough. But this movie was just, it was silly and dumb and not in like we were talking about fun popcorn, Fast and the Furious type way. Like it was just egregiously bad in various different ways. I'll start with the cast. I know we just talked about the A-list nature of this, the stars, everybody on the poster in their little V formation. Every single one in this movie, with the exception of Bryce Dallas Howard and Sam Rockwell, is in it for like maybe 5 minutes. It's just like a revolving door of these people. I know, like, it's pretty clear from the trailers that like Dua Lipa is going to be in it very briefly. Like nobody expected her to be like the star of this, unfortunately. But there are people that play like these fictional versions of the characters from the book. Like John Cena's in this for 5 minutes. Henry Cavill's in it throughout the movie, but in like 30-second increments. Dua Lipa has like the first 3 minutes and then is gone. Samuel L. Jackson comes in like halfway through and is there on and off for like 7 minutes. Ariana DeBose in it at the beginning, in it at the very end. That's it. Even Catherine O'Hara, who is like a real character, not like one of the fictional representations. She is in it for like 5 seconds. And so it's not even that I'm like, I don't feel cheated by the way. I'm not like, oh, they scammed us into seeing this because we thought there were going to be all these people. It's just like the underutilization of them all is pointless when they could all help make this better. There's a revolving door of characters that like you don't care about any of them because it's just like constantly like somebody new, and there's no time to like get to know any of them or spend time with any of them. And then we're stuck with Bryce Dallas Howard, and I will say Sam Rockwell is fun, but Bryce Dallas Howard is just kind of there. Sam Rockwell is fun. He's basically just doing like, I'm trying to think, like 3 Billboards, The Way Back. Like, I don't know what else I can remember off the top of my head with Sam Rockwell. I don't remember him being like this much of like a carbon copy of Owen Wilson. Maybe it's like fresh in my mind just because like Loki season 2 just happened, but he's like very much doing an Owen Wilson like type shtick. So it made me sad because I was like, why can't we just have Owen Wilson in this? But yeah, cast was just devastation, a waste. Feel free to chime in at any point, Johnny. But if there's nothing on the cast, I'll dive into the plot here because it's a huge portion of this.
Yeah, this is what I'm interested in.
I know we've talked a bit in recent weeks in the draft about the subgenre of fake thing becomes real thing in a movie. This just happened a couple years ago with The Lost City, in which I believe, let me pull it off.
I like The Lost City.
The Lost City was fun. Let me pull the 4K off my shelf here.
Reaching into the archives.
Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum have dynamite chemistry, and the Loretta Sage's novels are filled with ancient tombs and daring adventures, but that doesn't mean she's prepared for them in real life. When she is kidnapped by an eccentric billionaire who wants her to locate a legendary lost city, blah, 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 a handsome cover model has to save her. Basically the same sort of thing, even down to like the author writing it. So it's like, okay, we need to find the author who's going to help us solve this real life thing.
Yeah.
Same thing happens here. And then we've got the the Fall Guy coming out this summer, which is again not an author, but like stuntman has to be real life action hero to save the day. So this is a new thing apparently that people are doing. Those other two, Lost City is better than this. The Fall Guy I expect to be far better than this. But the first better. It does. The first hour and 15 minutes, I literally looked at my watch when the reveal happened, and it was an hour and 15 minutes in, and everything up into that point was just like an absolute drag, trying to like set the stage of this character of Ellie, getting her dragged into the spy world. And it was just pointless, unfortunately. And man, the whole premise of this, so basically Ellie's the author. She is trying to write her final chapter, or she like is writing her book, wants to end it on a cliffhanger, and then her mom's like, oh no, like we need you to write, like this is not good, it's a cop out, you need to write the final chapter, don't end it on the cliffhanger, like resolve it. And she's trying to like come out with the new book, can't really figure it out. And then Sam Rockwell like approaches her and is like, hey, there are these spies coming to get you, I'm here to protect you, blah blah blah. Explains the whole thing of like, you're basically predicting like all these real life scenarios in which this like agency is fighting with another agency. And it's just like the whole premise is like, we have to find this microchip. Why? Who knows? I don't know. Like they're trying to find microchip before the bad guys do. Very underbaked premise.
So generic. What the hell?
Yeah, it's literally just like, here's a MacGuffin, go get it. And all of this leads to the big twist. Prepare yourself for the Agent Argylle reveal. Drum roll, please, for the identity of the real Agent Argylle. Turns out it's not Taylor Swift. Swifties had theorized that she might be involved. She might be the author of this. It's not someone who's a new cameo. It's not someone coming in. It's not Henry Cavill. Instead, it is Bryce Dallas Howard. It is Ellie Conway herself. Agent Argylle is named that because turns out Ellie Conway is not her real name. Her real name is Rachel Kyle, aka Agent R. Kyle. It turns out she's a former secret agent. She used to be partners with Aiden, Sam Rockwell's character, and was a good guy, was a secret spy. And they basically Jason Bourne this shit. So Ellie Conway, Rachel Kyle, was a secret agent, was on a mission. Something went wrong. Nobody knows what it was. They found her in a river. And similar to Jason Bourne, pulled out of water. But she was taken to the hospital, and before like the good guys, Sam Rockwell and his team could like get her, the bad guys found her, which is Bryan Cranston is the head of like the bad agency. And they found her and came in and planted the seeds. Like she had amnesia, essentially, again, Jason Bourne. And so they came in and like planted the seeds that like, oh, we're your parents, Bryan Cranston and Catherine O'Hara. So she's a bad guy too. And fake this whole thing, tell her about like, oh, you had an ice skating incident and you lost your memories, but here's like some notes about like what your life was like. And you're a writer, by the way. So like basically they convinced her into this Ellie Conway personality in which she is now a writer, and she's channeling the memories, unlocking her subconscious, and telling the stories of her as Agent Argylle, and it's like leading up to the mission that she was on. And that's why they need her to write the final chapter, is to figure out where this damn microchip is and what happened to it. And like the bad guys are trying to get her to write this so that they can go and finish the mission. The twist itself, as idiotic as it sounds, provides the only interesting like 15-minute period in this movie, where I was like, oh, maybe we can salvage this. Because it was cool to see like the way that like everything had been laid out as far as like the steps that they had taken to have her like write out this story, and the different layers to it. And then they just like immediately like move on, and everything gets dumb again because they dive into like 3 or 4 other twists throughout the second half of this movie, just for the sake of adding twists. Like okay, so it's like the reveal, she was good, but then she got caught by the bad guys and then was like brainwashed into this personality, and then like she accepts that she was like a good guy, she's channeling back to her old self, and then it's like, wait, but she was actually working for the bad guys all along and was never good. And they're like, wait, just kidding, she was good. And then it's like, okay, Catherine O'Hara died, but wait, she came back to life. Ariana DeBose died, but then she came back to life. Like at the end, she comes back as like she was killed on a mission. That's what they thought, but then it ended up being like some fan wrote in and was like, this is like, some fan of the books wrote in and was like,
yeah,
if you did this, like you could bring that character back to life if like it was this injury. And then she was going to do that in the book, and then it turns out that fan is actually this person in real life, letting her know that she actually is still alive. It's so dumb. But she's like a like Deus Ex Machina saving the day at the end of the movie. But anyway, all of these twists, it just like undermines any sort of, not that I was ever invested in the stakes of this story, but you know, twisting for the sake of twists, for the sake of shock value. You don't care about anything that happens to the characters because you're like, oh, well, there's just going to be another twist. Like, I'm not invested in this. I don't think that this is actually happening, or I'm not concerned about someone dying if they're able to just come back to life. There's no sense of stakes in this movie because of all of that. And it loses any sort of like credibility that it was starting to build in that section where it was like the one big reveal, and this is how we're going to have the fallout of it. So as soon as they tried to make it interesting, they just fumbled the bag and made it worse than ever. And that's, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so so this sounds terrible. I mean, I think that that goes without saying at this point. um, I mean, the writing, the story, the characters sound like absolutely non-existent. Now, too, let's say on to be devil's advocate here, the Kingsman movies and other Matthew Vaughn movies, they've had some better characters and story than this, I would say, certainly. Um, but that probably wouldn't be like what they're best known for, like their forte in
Hmm.
terms of oh, like you're watching it for the story or like the characters. Like you're there for the action.
Right.
You want to see cool fight scenes, you want to see cool stunts. And from what I saw in the trailers, nothing about it looked appealing to me on that front either. And that's why I really couldn't justify trying to even give this a chance. Because if I'm not there
Right.
for the characters, I'm not there for the visuals or the action. What am I supposed to be there for? So I'm curious to hear more about like what you thought of that.
Let me tell you, brother, you're not here for the action in this one either, unfortunately. Let's think back for a second. Matthew Vaughn, Kingsman, Colin Firth in the church, like that's a
Mm,
badass sequence of, you have the needle drop and then him just going nuts when the chips are like the microchips or whatever in their brain flip and everybody starts attacking him. And he's like 1 on 50 in this church, just taking people out left and right. There's absolutely like stylization and like a
yeah.
whimsical element to this. Like it's excessive with the gore and the blood and like just the ridiculousness of it, but it's still like well choreographed, exciting action. Um, and even like Elton John going nuts. I don't know if you saw the second Kingsman, like
Yeah.
when they have like that sequence where he's like being held hostage and like goes crazy in the fight scene. Like it's silly, but it works. And it's
Yeah.
exciting action. This is like taking that to the extreme on the like silly side without any of the benefits of like still having good action. Um, Nothing in this is like well choreographed, and it's just such a weird blend of like every fight scene is like 2 seconds of action, and then Henry, like if it is there's like this one sequence where um the not Henry Cavill, why can't I think? Um, the Sam Rockwell character is
Mm.
like fighting. It's when they first meet, and he's like explaining it all to her and defending her from like the attackers. And like it cuts between him being himself and like the fake Agent Argylle of Henry Cavill, like substituting and fighting and defending her. And so it's like every 5 seconds, it's like a punch, a punch. Henry Cavill turns and winks at the camera and is like seducing Bryce Dallas Howard while they're fighting. It's just like there's no the tonal imbalance in this movie is off the charts as they blend action and comedy and romance. And the most egregious is there's at the end there's a final climactic fight scene that is like a dance. Um,
Oh God.
and it's literally there Bryce Dallas Howard and Sam Rockwell are dancing in this entire fight, and it's horrific. And then she has, um, and then there's like oil that gets spilled all over the floor, and she sticks two knives in her shoes and uses them as ice skates and skates around and beats people up. And
Okay. This
it's
sounds
just
like genuinely the worst thing I've ever
it's like
heard.
it's literally like they're just throwing things at the wall and none of it makes any sense. And none of it looks good because like I said, the choreography is bad, but also just absolutely egregious green screens. The CGI is so bad, and like
Yeah.
everything is so
It looks
like
bad.
there's not a real set in this movie. It doesn't seem like even just like on location shooting like doesn't exist. It's all just like them in front of a green screen with the backdrop of I don't know whatever city you're Shanghai or wherever they are supposed to be. um it's just awful. But um the worst
Good.
part, Johnny, the worst part,
Wow, we haven't even got to the worst part
we
yet. Okay.
haven't.
All right.
It's just the audacity of this film. um is that once this thing comes to an end and you have the sweet release of credits rolling, You think it's over. Um, Instead, a mid-credit scene occurs in which 20 years earlier, um, a young Agent Argylle, the fictional one, so it's a different actor, but playing a younger version of Henry Cavill's character, goes to a pub. It's called the King's Man,
Wow.
and says some code word to the bartender, um, gets a package that has a gun in it, and then it cuts to a cover of the first Argylle book, and it says Argylle Book One, the movie coming soon. Um,
What
I
the
don't
hell?
know if this is like a gimmick.
What does that even mean?
It is. I imagine that because there is a book
That'd be
that
like a
was
prequel or something?
there's a book like within the world of this movie. Ellie Conway has written 5 Argyle books as
Okay.
fictional adventures based on like her past life as a
Yeah.
secret agent. And there's a book that accompanies this movie. I don't know if like this is a not if the book is a novelization of the movie or if the book is the fictional book written by Ellie Conway that chronicles like that first adventure.
Yeah.
But so that's what this seems like is that they are now making a movie about like set within the fictional world that this is like there will be a movie centering around the fake Agent Argylle, Henry Cavill's younger character. And I hope this is a gimmick within the movie that this isn't actually happening because I can't imagine with the reactions that this is getting that they're already invested in a second follow-up movie to this, that they're making an Argylle universe. And for the love of God, I hope that Matthew Vaughn, like I'm not like a Matthew Vaughn stan, but like get him out of this as soon as you can.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I was just like I groaned when that happened. It was a horror. It was just like a kick in the nuts after this movie.
Brother. That is a tough beat. I hate that for you. Um, yeah, I mean, I wish I could be. I'm not going to pretend to be more surprised. I mean, some of this does surprise me, like how bad the twists are, and like some of the action you described. Everything else, though, I mean, the trailers, or I guess the one trailer, I feel like it was the same one I saw over and over for the last, 4 months. Um, it looked terrible. I mean, I absolutely hated when I would go to the theater and sit there and had to watch it.
That's the good news, brother. That trailer's a thing of the past now.
That is great news. I am very thrilled about that. And Madam Web will be out of there as well soon. So, and I don't think this is going to be a bad movie by any means, but it's a movie that I'm tired of seeing like the trailer for because it's been pushed back and delayed. Is the Bob Marley movie, which comes out in like a week or two, I think. Which separate from its quality is just like, oh my God, I've seen this trailer for like 8 months, it feels like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, February, we're in a little bit of a rough patch here, I think. But God, I can't understand the logic behind paying however much they paid Apple did for this. I mean, I guess Apple's not in the business of like penny pinching, obviously.
Mhm.
Maybe they'll get something out of this on streaming, and I don't
I
know
feel
how.
like enough people will be like, just like I was saying, seeing John Cena, seeing Henry Cavill, seeing Dua Lipa, and being like, "Oh, this is streaming on Apple. Like, I'll check it out." Like, it's the
Yeah,
same shit with like Red Notice on, or like The Gray Man. I don't know what number. Like, those are both like #1 Netflix movie of all
yeah,
time or whatever. Like,
right.
where people are like, "Oh, Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. Like, hell yeah,
Yeah,
let me turn this on." Or here's The Rock.
yeah. No,
So
I agree with you there. I think that could be worthwhile in that respect. I don't think this is going to be the next, James Bond franchise.
bold strategy, Johnny. I that's a bold
Um,
prediction.
yeah, I just don't. I mean, I know like they're doing a Gray Man sequel, I think. Like I think that panned out well
And they're
enough.
supposed to do a Red Notice sequel. At least at one point they
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, Netflix has like their own ecosystem and like their own way of doing things. I really don't see a way forward for like a sequel or prequel or anything for this, given it literally made $6.5 million yesterday. And when I say yesterday, I mean opening day as of this recording, Friday. $6.5 million in the US. So
I'm now
yeah.
convinced, I will say, now that, like, I know there was questions of like, oh, how is like Argylle the movie, like it's coming out and it's based on a book that hasn't even been released yet. Like this was definitely, the book is definitely like a plant that was like part of this movie's promotion. I don't think
Oh,
it
for
was
sure. For
like
sure.
the book came later.
Yeah.
Also, the funniest thing, someone resurfaced it, that like Variety or Hollywood Reporter tweet or whatever from like 3 years ago, where it was like Matthew Vaughn set to direct a movie where Bryce Dallas Howard stars as an author who used to be a super spy or whatever. And it's like, we've known all along the identity of Agent Argylle.
Man, that made my day when I saw that. I thought that was just the funniest thing ever. But yeah, I guess that's probably enough on that, unless you have any final comments to put Argyle in the grave.
No, end it,
And
please.
well, we appreciate you all for listening. And like I said, February might be a little bit of a lull in terms of new movies in the theater, but at least in quality. But we got plenty of stuff ahead, especially on the Dune front. So stay tuned, follow on Twitter, follow on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. You can find all of those pages and accounts at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeart, YouTube, anywhere you can find a podcast, we are there. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and make sure you come back next time for another great episode. We'll see you then.